I'm Ros-Gold Onwude, and this is Risk and Reward. Today I'm talking with two-time Super Bowl champion Malcolm Jenkins about what it takes to prepare himself to be a face of a social justice movement and how he's building a blueprint for Black economic equity and empowerment. Malcolm, how has the voice and the platform of the modern pro athlete evolved from when you first entered the NFL in 2009 to now?
I think it's night and day. When I came in, I can remember, thinking so much about the talks we had about building a brand, and you were trying to do everything you could to be liked by other companies so you could garner sponsorships and dollars off the field and things like that. And you were very much, trying to almost be chose by these companies, where now I think you see athletes not only gaining a voice socially when it comes to speaking up for their own contracts in sports or speaking up for things that are happening in society, but you also see athletes shifting from this idea of just sponsorship to being partners and having equity and really owning their likeness, owning the companies, that they're investing in or getting paid by. So not only are they still getting paid to do the endorsements, but they're also getting equity on the back end of those companies that they're helping build the profile of. And I think that mindset is really changing athletes from just being, laborers to really being businessmen.
When do you think it became a safe space, if you will, for athletes to speak up in these ways and not be afraid to offend brands?
I don't think it became cool until probably 2020. I think you had athletes like Colin Kaepernick, myself, and a few other guys, LeBron James, and a lot of the women in WNBA who, kind of kicked these doors down, took all of the heat. And then obviously with all that happened in 2020 and the social unrest and what's happening in our country, it made it very easy now for people to kind of come under the social justice banner and speak their voices and be heard. So without all of the consequences. So that's always, you always have to recognize those who kind of ran in the door first and took all the heat that now allow other athletes and even you see it now with a lot of high school basketball players declaring that they're going to go to an HBCU. Mm-hmm. Those things are directly, reflected from the work and those first people who run through the door. That allows that access. People get bold. People start to look at it and see how can they, be a part of that change. And it's exciting to see. So business, philanthropy, activism was to surround myself with people I could trust who do the work. And more often than not, that ends up being Black women. So if you look at my team from, the head of my foundation to my production company to a venture capital fund, all of them are led by Black women. My mom is the president of my foundation. She's the person who really influenced me to start the foundation. And she's taught herself how to run, a foundation. We've been doing this for 10 years, have grown to serve in 10 different states or 4 different states. Had thousands of kids come through our programs, and this is somebody who just went on the internet, figured out how to do it, figured out how to fundraise, how to, follow all of the standards to be a 501c3, and really took this foundation, from just an idea to something that's impacted thousands of people. And so that was my first example.
Malcolm understands the power of his platform and the responsibility that comes with it, so he's been educating himself to make his efforts even stronger. I saw you accepted a Harvard fellowship to study the wealth gap between Black and whites in America. And I'm just curious, why'd you decide to, go back to school and study this?
Yeah, well, I got invited by Harvard to come do their fellowship. They call it the Global Sports Initiative. And they invited me, and they said, hey, you can study whatever it is you want. And I remember when I graduated college, I was like, I'm never going back to school. but as a Black kid, I'm like, oh, Black man, I'm like, I'd have Harvard fellow behind me. I'm not turning down that opportunity. So I've always been intrigued by the story of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Black Wall Street. And so what I wanted to do was to figure out, if the dispossession of wealth, like we saw in Black Wall Street back in 1921, if there were so many, once I learned there were so many other instances like that out in the country at the time that happened before Tulsa, that really primed the country for Tulsa. That Tulsa was actually very normal. So I'm like, well, I wonder if there's a correlation between the dispossession of wealth and some of the policies and things that happened way back when, if we look now to this generation, if it correlates with the wealth gap that we have, where white people on average have 10 times the net worth that Black people have, and it's not getting any better. Home ownership is the same, or is worse now than it was in the 60s for Black Americans. So, I want to know how history got us to this point. And so I actually that's the project I'm working on now from a documentary standpoint, is what I found in that fellowship. So being able to talk to professors and doctors from all around the country, experts who study different aspects, of Black life, in the early, or the 1920s, and or even in slavery, how I always thought that we hit the ground after slavery and didn't know what to do. Right? They freed us, we didn't have any land, didn't have where to go, so we were forced to just sharecrop. When in actuality, they were so savvy. They already had their business networks. They already had things, even while enslaved, where they went from plantation to plantation, had commerce, had business. And so it just shows it's a time for us to celebrate Black wealth and what we've done, even despite of all of the things that have been, laid on top of us, but also to have an accurate description of the tools and traps that have been set for generations, that really paint the picture as to why we are here today and how we can climb out of that hole.
Part of closing that wealth gap, or changing the way society views Black people, Black life, Black men, is by paying attention to language and the media coverage of those communities. Who's telling the story matters. And with that in mind, Malcolm started his own production company, Listen Up Media. What was the opportunity that you saw and you tried to seize when you started your production company, Listen Up Media?
We started the production company, and I got invited to be a participant in a film called Black Boys that was exploring kind of the humanity of Black boys and Black men, and how that humanity is oftentimes under attack as early as grade school. And I was really intrigued because the director of the film is a white woman, and I wanted to know, well, why do you want to tell this story? And it was intriguing because she said she grew up in, a background where both of her parents were very liberal. They participated in the civil rights movement in the 60s, and they had every reason for her to believe that she's not racist or things like that. But she realized once she got to college that she had a fear of Black boys that she couldn't really understand where it came from, and she wanted to explore that. So the first film she made was about school segregation, and how, without realizing it, she had been in segregated schools her whole life, which is why she didn't have a proper scope of Black boys, who they are, what they are. It's only what society had told her. And so, they allowed me to come onto that project as an executive producer, to be executive producer of Black Boys, and really have input, because I'm like, this is a powerful story, and I want to make sure with it coming from her voice that is received the right way, and that she frames it the right way. And it was a project I had a lot of fun, not only participating in, but being able to give feedback on the final product. And it was, I was really moved by it.
That is awesome. And, the documentary, Black Boys, it was your first as an executive producer. I know it's been doing great. It's currently streaming on Peacock. It's won multiple honors, but they absolutely needed your voice. Now that I'm listening to the origin story of this, they needed your eyes. And listening to you, I completely agreed, because there is a certain way that we have normalized the storytelling around Black men and Black life. What do you think is the role of the media, and what do you hope will be your role in the media as far as the way we storytell around Black men and Black life?
Yeah, I think that the media, media has really taken over the majority of our perspective in life. Like the majority of what we think as human beings has been, taught to us or conditioned to us. And very little of it is from our own experiences or our parents. A lot of it is from the world, TV, social media, things like that. And so, and when you look at those mediums, there's no way to really slow that pace down, right? You can put books in front of people's faces all you want. They're going to want to be on their phone. So you have to be able to meet people where they are. And when you look at the media now, I think you're starting to see a bit of a move and a shift, but we're still so far behind that there's plenty of space where we need to fill, our TVs with different stories, especially Black stories that represent even the different sections of us, because we're not a monolith, right? And so oftentimes we've got plenty of, the crime movies, we got, plenty of the Cosby perfect, ideas of us, but we don't get to see the insecure Black men, the weirdos, the nerds, the people that are dealing with all kind of life things, and those are the stories that, I want to tell, and I think that we need, to be able to see, because I heard somebody say this to me. They were talking about George Floyd. They said for a man to only be able to stick his knee on another man's neck for that long, you had to see him as either subhuman or superhuman. And oftentimes in film and media, that's how we see Black men, is either superhuman or subhuman. So we see the LeBron James or we see the criminals, right? And not only and therefore that paints the brush for every Black man out there that this is where they are. But everyone else gets, when we watch film and things, you see the entire plethora of their humanity. You see different types of white people, see different types of Asian people, Spanish people. And so therefore you see them as human beings. And so I think we need to start to put more of those images out there of just us being able to exist outside of, the stereotypes that we normally see.
Malcolm's efforts are multifaceted. He's also building a blueprint for Black economic equity through the creation of a venture capital fund, Broad Street Ventures. With your Broad Street Ventures Fund, how does what you're doing there fit into your overall vision as well?
So what I'm doing with Broad Street Ventures, I co-founded it with Rolanda Johnson, who's a childhood friend of mine, but she and Eric Campbell are the general partners. So they run the fund, and it is funded by Black athletes and entertainers. And what I wanted to do was, we look at the venture capital space and all of the money that's out there. Oftentimes, athletes get knocked on their door, tapped, for investments, and oftentimes we don't have the structure to do due diligence. We can't study the markets. We don't know how to really go through a business plan and know if this idea will work or not. We're just kind of taking chances. And oftentimes there are startup companies, which are high risk. And, it took me to be educated a little bit to really understand it. And what I realized is that, not only do Black people need access to these quality deals that you see, all over. And that's the biggest thing. We need access to the real deals. Like, where are people making money and how do we get our money alongside of that? But also just understanding venture capital and investing, at its basic level, investing in growth stage and late stage companies. We invested into Airbnb. They just went IPO, I think, in December, early. So, we've invested about different ones: Toro, Zenwater, Epic Games, and a few others. So, with the whole goal of bringing athletes on, Black athletes and entertainers, to really get into this space, to understand it, not make some money, but also to be kind of a proof of concept, to be able to show athletes, like, you can set up your own funds. We can be doing this stuff together. And then once we start really making money outside of our labor, outside of what we do for sports, we can take that money and invest it into Black companies. We can take that money and create another fund where we invest in our communities. But to be able to have longevity, we've got to be able to make money beyond what we can squeeze out of our bodies. And I think that's for everybody. When I look at our communities, like, who has the best opportunity to really leverage that? I don't know if we're the best, but we definitely have opportunity. So for me, I'm looking at my peers specifically, to be able to say, what are you thinking about when your investments? I want you to understand, venture capital. I want you to be educated on it, but also participate. And if you don't, if you want to see if it works, here's a model. This is what we've done. 6 months into it, we've got Airbnb already, went IPO. We've got some others that are close on the line. And once you introduce it, you see people start to get a little bit more comfortable in it. Because athletes, I don't know if everybody's seen that documentary 30 for 30 broke. Like ever since that, guys have really been, kind of shy, and people hear invest, but unless you have the due diligence to invest smart and intelligently, and with the people who make money, you tend not to make returns, and those opportunities haven't really been out there that much. So that was really the ethos of why we started the fund, was to educate guys and to give us opportunities to get in those good deals, with the long-term vision to really see other people replicating it and doing it on a larger platform.
It takes work, and you're absolutely right. Like Black communities have utmost potential, but a lot of that is kind of safeguarded and by gatekeepers and access and education. And I love what you guys are doing to set an example as Black athletes and kind of set up a blueprint for how this can be done. Malcolm, you are multifaceted. To say the least.
Thank you.
But from one athlete to another, basketball here.
Yeah.
I know you take your craft as an elite football player very seriously. What would you say if your career off of the field was better known than your 2-time Super Bowl winning career on the field when it's all said and done?
I hope that that's the case. Playing the game is fun, and I take it, serious, but in the grand scheme of, what my life is, I'd like to believe that I'd be known for for more than just playing a game really good. My game requires skill and a world, talent, but at the same time, I want to really have a legacy, for the people that I love. Like, my kids being able to come to my games and family being able to see me play, that stuff is great. But I want to, have a larger impact on people and the people around me, the cities that I lived in, this world. And I want to be known for more than just what I did from the age of 18 to 30, whenever I retire. So, that's a short window of my life. So I hope that there is so much more to be accomplished. And I hope that even the things that I've accomplished so far off the field, carry more weight than what I've done on, because that's how I view them.
What is the ultimate reward that you feel you're fighting for right now with everything that you're doing?
My biggest thing is for myself is, how do I create stability, generational stability for not only myself, but my family and, those who are close to me. How do we do this together? How do we build this tribe? And then from a world standpoint is, how do I leave structures or examples in place for people to take this further than I can? Knowing that I can't, do it on my own back, how do I create organizations? How do I make connections? How do I leave tools for when I step away, for somebody else to take it further than I do, so that whatever I'm doing lasts way longer than my own legacy, my own life, or anything like that. That's been my focus.
Right on. I mean, I think you're doing exactly that.